Hello and welcome here to another edition of the Husker Online Postgame Live Show. Sean Callahan, Stephen Sipple, Robin Washett here. We're going to take you for about the next hour or so as we recap Nebraska's 26-9 loss to Illinois here on Saturday. It was a game with a lot of different storylines that broke out. Most notably, quarterback Casey Thompson out now with an injury on his arm, his hand, his bicep. We don't know the extent of that injury. But bottom line is it was a disaster for Nebraska once Thompson went out of the ball game. The Husker offense ran 20 second half plays in this game for 27 yards, Rob? 29 yards. So, they had nothing going. 3 total first downs in the second half. You really couldn't have drawn this thing up worse for Nebraska once Thompson went out of this game. Trey Palmer was a non-factor, 6 targets, 1 catch, 1 yard. The running game was a non-factor after some early runs by Anthony Grant. Sip, kind of, you finished your big take. What was your takeaway from this one?
Well, I mean, the day began with a lot of promise. Even though it didn't seem like the crowd was that jacked up, which made an impression on me. But the day began with Nebraska. You were thinking maybe a win could put them squarely in the division hunt. It could build some momentum going into a rugged November, and it could enhance Mickey Joseph's candidacy for the head coaching gig. Now all of that lost steam, a lot of steam. With 9:38 left, too. This is what will always be striking to me about this game. Vokalek catches that pass and goes for a touchdown, long touchdown down the sideline. And Nebraska's a 9-6 lead. And you're thinking, a lot of things go through your head. Mm-hmm. Maybe this will be a bowl team. How's this going to impact Mickey if they can pull this off? And then it turned so quickly.
It went south in a hurry.
Went south. In the next, that was with 9:38 left, when Vokalek took that ball into the end zone to give Nebraska a 3-point lead. And I think it was with 6:31 left in the half when Casey went down. And then there was just trouble. It was just trouble from there.
Yeah. They just got in a 3-and-out stop, and they had Ramir Johnson streaking down the sideline on a wheel route that they had worked the entire bye week on. Mickey Joseph said they ran that about 10 to 12 times, and it worked to perfection every time they ran it in practice. And yet, when it comes into the game with a chance to really change the entire complexion of that whole afternoon, they can't make the play. And the immediate fallout from just that one bit of adversity was pretty striking. We hadn't seen that under a Mickey Joseph team yet. It happened a lot under Frost, where they walk such a fine line that the first bad thing that happened, a lot of times they would just kind of go into a shell and the game would be over. But this was the first time we'd see that under Mickey, to where they didn't make that play, and then they didn't capitalize on the momentum, and they lost it immediately. Now, granted, Casey Thompson's injury had a lot to do with that, but there was a lot of other issues at play beyond just the quarterback.
Well, think about that. If Ramir Johnson catches that ball, it's 9-6. Mm-hmm. Nebraska gets a stop, and if he catches that ball, they're into enemy territory. They're in the Illinois territory.
Yeah, worst case, it's 1st and 10 deep in Illinois territory.
Pretty deep into Illinois. I think he would have got across
in
the 50,
Illinois territory.
Yeah, in Illinois territory. And you're looking at Nebraska maybe going up. Is 9-6, so going up 16-6.
Could have been 2 scores.
And let's see how Illinois responds to that kind of pressure. We never got to see that.
And this wasn't a protection issue. It wasn't like Casey Thompson was running around for his life. He had adequate time in this game early to make throws. Mark Whipple drew up some great play concepts early in this game, and he was missing. You go back to that first drive. Yep. Trey Palmer ran across the middle, didn't see him. Then he threw the tight end, almost had a pick. Yeah. Then he goes to Trey Palmer and throws a pick. Just Casey early was rusty. He didn't have a rhythm. And Illinois, give them credit. That's a great defense, a very good defense.
I think it's
And they handled them. They looked like a team that would win the Big Ten West. Mm-hmm. A good running game, a good defense, a good head coach.
And a highly efficient quarterback.
And a quarterback, not an elite Ohio State CJ Stroud,
No,
but the guy went
not quite.
He went 20 of but he went 20 of 22.
Right, that was good.
He went 20 of 22 for 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
I mean, how do you criticize that? And he ran it. I mean,
I'm not. I'm just saying he's not CJ Stroud.
He ran it very
we'll
effectively.
stick with highly efficient.
Yeah.
How about that? I mean, he came in completing over 70%. He was over 90 today.
Oh.
I mean, that's what it takes. When you run the ball, Chase Brown had 140, almost 150 yards rushing, touchdown, caught a touchdown. So he did his, and you knew he was going to get his numbers. But the way Illinois was able to keep drives going through the air and the effectiveness. Now, again, they had less than 200 yards, so they didn't like light it up, but they moved the change. They got all of those third down conversion plays. They had that big play right out of the gates, 46-yard on a crossing route where they schemed Nebraska up out of their cleats. And the Williams kid, Isaiah Williams, took it to the house. But other than that, it was dink and dunk, methodic, efficient, and they kept drives on schedule to where, they didn't make mistakes. Nebraska made the critical mistakes, and that was the difference in the game.
And Chase Brown, the nation's leading rusher, 32 carries for 149 yards, just a long run at 21.
Not too bad.
But what he did was he played situational football. When they needed 2 on 3rd and 2, he got 2. When they were around the end zone, he scored. I mean, that third down throw from DeVito to Brown, I mean, Nebraska got great pressure, and they found Brown for the touchdown. So he didn't necessarily have a home run game.
No, he didn't.
But it was a game to win the Big Ten West. He just did the things that mattered, and they didn't try to overdo it with Chase Brown. It was a very workmanlike 32 for 149.
Well, I mean, I'll turn that around and say Nebraska did a pretty good job on him. This game wasn't really on Nebraska's defense. The offense put a lot of pressure on Nebraska's defense. Come on, I mean, Sean, you said something on the sideline near the end of the game that made a lot of sense to me. And that is Casey Thompson, a good quarterback can disguise a lot of issues. Nebraska just wasn't good enough. Too many issues to overcome without Casey.
And it's kind of danger zone. When you think about the way Minnesota played today.
Same thing.
They allowed Rutgers 134 yards total.
0 points.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
And then you got Michigan and the questions surrounding Casey Thompson. And it just my feel, 8:45 Saturday night, it doesn't feel good with Casey Thompson right now.
No, it doesn't. Now, think about the defenses Nebraska's going to face going forward. So they play Minnesota, which is 6th nationally in total defense. Michigan is, I think, 5th nationally in total. Oh, they're all top 12 nationally in total defense, except for Wisconsin, which is 33rd. And Wisconsin still plays pretty ornery.
All of a sudden, they're starting to play better.
And they didn't play today, Wisconsin, right?
Right. So you're facing ornery defenses now, perhaps without Casey. Yeah, this is a bad deal. This is a bad day for Nebraska.
All three of the teams that played today that Nebraska still plays, all 3 won. Iowa had one of their better performances. Obviously, I shouldn't say Michigan hasn't won yet. They're still playing right now.
They're winning as we speak.
What is the score?
I think they either just kicked a field goal or they're about to kick a field goal. They were up 10-7.
Ooh.
About to be 13.
Mel Tucker, they make this one in. Michigan's always close, so no matter what.
Either way, the point goes that the schedule is not going to get easier for Nebraska. And Nebraska all of a sudden has now its biggest question, concern, whatever you want to call it, that it's had all year with Casey Thompson. I mean, if he misses next week, if he misses beyond that, you really can't give them much of a chance at all, in my opinion. Based off what we saw, especially out of Chubba Purdy, I mean, they couldn't do anything. They could not move the football.
Drop off.
And again, it wasn't the offensive line just totally breaking down. They were just missing throws. There was no comfort in the pocket whatsoever. It just kind of looked like a big mess. And now you've got a week to try to figure that out against a Minnesota defense that just held their opponent under 200 yards and shut them out. Good luck.
I didn't think Chubba looked ready.
No.
Which leads to the question.
I would have liked to see
why did he only play in the second half?
One more Logan Smothers.
Where was Smothers?
I don't think anybody would have been fired up. I mean, disappointed if Logan got an extra series.
Well, Mickey alluded to it. They had to throw the ball to come back. They got down to a degree that you had to throw.
But there were points when you could have made the case to bring him in earlier, like after that fumble when they were spotted, at least a field goal. I mean, running the ball there and taking 3, it's a 1-possession game then. And the game's different at that point. Instead, Chubba runs around, forces a terrible throw across his body and is picked off, and then basically sign, seal, deliver.
And you guys talk about schedule. We did learn today the Minnesota game next weekend here in Memorial Stadium. That will be an 11 a.m. game on ESPN2. And, we had a great crowd, great day. It looks like it's going to be great weather next week as well. But I will be interested, especially if we know going in that Casey's not going to play against Minnesota for an 11 a.m. game. Like what the feel is going to be like. Will there be, I know the tickets will be sold, but will there be more empties for a game like this if Casey's out and it's an early kick and just have a good feel today right now?
Yeah. I was, like I said, I alluded to this early. I thought there'd be more energy in the stadium today. Maybe people are a little
seemed
worn
hesitant.
Out. Yeah.
Like even when things were going well, people were like, whoa, what's going on? Like they didn't want to like fully believe it was happening. And then obviously the other shoe dropped. And
yeah, I think a lot of fans good fans, smart fan base, understood probably what Nebraska was up against. Mm-hmm. Again, though, I will tell you, when Vokalek went in, I get it. The margin for error is small. And that's what we saw. For Nebraska, the margin for error is really small. And that's what we saw. Let's face it. Nebraska was good enough to make this interesting for a little over a quarter. And maybe that's all we should have expected. Except if Casey's in, if Casey doesn't go down.
Changes a lot.
I mean, maybe they're in that.
Because the big play's there. When Casey's out, I mean, not only the big play's gone, no plays are there.
Yeah. Just getting a first down out of the equation.
There. I
mean, it would seem like it.
When Trey Palmer, he was targeted 6 times.
He tried
1 catch for 1 yard.
And that's not all his fault. I mean, he was open and they just missed him.
Illinois was handsy. That's what Mickey said. Illinois was going to make it tough for him by being handsy, and he'd have to run through a lot of contact. And he did have to run through contact. And you know what? Trey's not the most physical receiver.
No, Mickey kind of called him out on it too. Yeah. He says he needs to be able to do better at running his routes through contact.
The one thing I'd watch if I were an NFL, if I was an NFL GM or NFL coach on him is that you notice it when he runs reverses. He doesn't roll through contact very well. He's a speed guy, but in the NFL, you'll get a lot of hands on you in the NFL.
Yeah.
Well, if you're joining us now, thank you very much. You're watching the Husker Online Postgame Live Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. We're taking you home here as Nebraska 26-9 losers to Illinois. They'll come back for an 11 a.m. game we learned here just minutes ago against Minnesota. And we, if you haven't checked out Husker Online, we got all our post-game content up. Sipple's column's up. You always want to read Sipple's column. We've been reading Sipple probably 30-plus years. Go to Husker Online. He's got his column up now. Robin's got 5 things we've learned. I've got the final grades takes up. All the post-game videos are up. So get on Husker Online. Not a member. You can get on for $10 for the year. It's a promotional special that we have right now. Let's look at our front page. As you can see, Sipple's column, dispiriting loss, cast dark shadow on Nebraska and Joseph's candidacy.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Was it an easy one to write, Sip? I mean, did you kind of have this figured out by about the 3rd quarter?
Yeah, it wasn't hard to write because of that. I mean, because you knew really at halftime they're in trouble. Now, as far as Mickey's candidacy goes, I don't like to – we do this with other coaches too. We'll do it with Stoops, by the way. Mark Stoops' Kentucky team's
base it on one game,
getting hammered. Yeah, we do that. Yeah, we
game to game.
Yeah, dismiss.
Like Matt Campbell's out of it.
Right. Well,
that's how it feels, though.
Yeah. Now Campbell's dates to last year, so that's not a great example.
A continuation of
right. But with Mickey, this hurts. This does. He's in an audition. He's been in an audition since the Oklahoma game, and this part of the audition was a flop.
Yeah,
it didn't go well.
And you can say, he got some bad breaks, obviously, with losing your starting quarterback. That's going to be tough for any coach. But, just the quarterback management. I think you can really question how they handled that. We talked about, why they didn't rotate or give Logan Smothers more of a chance, and maybe why they didn't try to do some things like run the ball more. When you have a green quarterback like that in there and that against that type of defense, try to do some things to take the pressure off of him, as opposed to having him drop back 15 times and only complete three passes. So, I mean, like 8 times, I should say. Anyway, the question about Mickey, though, is that sort of stuff. And then also that, again, this is the first time where we saw kind of the same issues Nebraska had been having under Frost happened under Mickey. And they're far enough removed, in my opinion, from the Frost era and some of the stuff that was going on there. For that to happen again kind of makes you question things a little bit more.
I want to talk about first down too, guys. Nebraska today on 18 first down calls, they threw it 11 times and they only ran it 7 times. So, and they were 3 of 11 for 27 yards on first down throws. Nebraska only averaged 1.7 yards on first down. And this become very predictable at that point. And I feel like Whipple, he has great concepts and designs. Like, guys are open, but if they're not executed, there are a lot of 2nd and 10s. And then they were running on 2nd and 10 to Grant, and it just felt like the flow of the game in general just didn't have the rhythm you would want to see. But Nebraska was 3 of 11 for 27 yards on first down throws.
Yeah, and Grant, he didn't have a bad game in terms of efficiency.
Just no flow to it, though.
Anthony Grant ran 12 times for 61 yards. That's 5.1 a carry. Now, maybe if Whipple had it back, he'd say I would maybe should have ran Anthony on first down more often and not thrown 11 times.
11 out of 18 first downs were throws.
Okay.
And so Illinois, so Nebraska averaged 1.7 on first downs in the 18 attempts they had on first down plays. Illinois was 4.3. So Illinois had that nice 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5 on average the entire game. Nebraska was sitting 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8. You can't win. You are not, especially when Trey Palmer is not getting touches and Casey's hurt. That's the game right there.
Well, and again, it comes down to execution, because we'd have a different conversation if they're hitting on those first down plays that were there. Ramir Johnson's play was there.
Yeah, it was.
Trey Palmer running uncovered underneath on a crossing route, and just Casey Thompson doesn't see him. That was there. They dialed up some really good pass plays on first down that just more often than not were not executed. And so as a result, they had to return to the running game. And so first down run or second down runs, you'd be like, wow, they've been great on first down. Instead of 2nd and 6, you'd have, or 3rd and 6, you'd have 2nd and 6. And I think that happened far too much because they had stuff that they wanted to do that was there. They just couldn't execute it, and it threw off their entire plan. And so if those plays hit, maybe this whole day goes differently, but they didn't hit, and Nebraska didn't adjust, especially after the quarterback change happened. You do wonder what this game would have looked like with Casey in it. Now, that raises all kinds of questions. Did they get, we're saying Chubba didn't look really well prepared. He didn't. No.
Which makes you wonder, was he getting enough reps in practice? Now, Mickey alluded to that. He said when you're a backup, you don't get a lot of reps in practice. Well, you could say to Mickey, if it was a more extensive interview, well, you can get the backup a lot of reps if you want,
It's a pro style practice, though.
Right.
Barrett Ruud alluded to that on the radio this week. He said that the practice structure they do resembles really what Pete Carroll did, which Ed Orgeron used in his coach. Pro style. This is the way they rep and execute and how they go about things.
So it's
how Bill did it. When Bill Callahan was the coach in Nebraska, the ones got like 90% of the reps, and the twos would get a series here and there. And I think a quarterback position, you're just not going to get a lot of good Tuesday, Wednesday reps to be ready for a game like this.
No,
to put the whole game on him. And Chubba Purdy, here's the line on Chubba. He was 3 of, let's see, what was Chubba's line here?
3 of 8.
3 of 8, 15 yards, sacked twice, 1 interception.
There's a bit, you talked about it again, Sean, on the sideline. The drop off from Casey to the backup was more profound than I thought it would be. I thought there was a period in August where Chubba might push for the job in the preseason camp. But what I saw today doesn't suggest that Casey was pushed hard for anything.
And what does that say about Smothers? We're having this questioning why Smothers wasn't playing. What does that say about how the staff feels about Logan Smothers and what the gap is between Chubba and Logan as throwers?
Now, I think you understand that to a certain degree. Logan doesn't have a real strong arm, downfield
to make
arm,
the pro
downfield
throws.
arm. And that's what you need in this offense. So that part makes sense to me, actually. He doesn't. You saw it last year against Iowa. He couldn't make those throws downfield, especially when they're trying to come back late. they had that final drive against Iowa, and the wind was a factor, and it really made an impression on me. He couldn't push that ball through tough wind. Casey can. Now Chubba, again, I just wonder how many, if he was prepared reps wise to orchestrate, to manage Nebraska's offense in a game against the top rated defense in the country. Nebraska probably would have had to play really, really, really well, almost as well as it can to beat Illinois. And you know what?
Sound football.
Yeah, and it fell well short. That's my disappointment. And they needed to play really well on a day like this to create some magic, and they didn't play very well. They really didn't.
And your colleague Vershawn Jackson at the ticket asked Mickey, is Richard Torres even an option? And Richard has probably the best arm of these quarterbacks, but he's just not ready.
Not for that.
Not for this. I mean,
against those defenses.
I mean, you're not going to. Richard Torres played like.
Hey, Richard, go play Michigan.
Torres knee and played a lower level of Texas high school football in San Antonio, not the highest level of teams.
Yeah.
He's got great arm talent, but yeah, they're not just going to say we're going to go with Richard Torres this week. It's Chubba or Logan.
Yeah. I know the argument can be made. Well, he's got 4 games left, or 4 games with his red shirt. You could throw him in there, but you're also risking some setbacks there where you get a guy
who's trying to win the job still.
You get a guy, destroyed at Michigan or whatever it may be. Then you got to rebuild that back up as opposed to just the physical standpoint. So, I mean, I think it just doesn't make sense right now. I mean, I think you work with what you have. You still have 2 young quarterbacks that you got to try to groom them first, as opposed to just jumping all the way down the line to your true freshman.
Well, the running back situation is not good. After after Anthony Grant,
they got nothing out of it.
I mean, Jacques Wegant tiptoed his way to, what did he finish with? 3 carries for -4 yards.
Ramir Johnson dropped a pass.
Jacques Wegant averaged -1.3 per carry today.
Terrible.
And I questioned when they took him out. Like, Grant didn't even have that many reps. Like, just keep Grant in. I mean, I get that you have a rotation, but in a game like this, like when Grant really hadn't been used much anyway, taking him out in that situation, they did score on that drive, I believe, because that was the one that they scored on. But it didn't have anything to do with Deanna, obviously. But yeah, they not having AJ Allen has just set things back as much as anything. I mean, he was really coming on, and Gabe Urban being out now too. I mean, they're in a real trouble spot, and Ramir Johnson had a chance to maybe change the game, and he failed in that situation.
He failed on his one play. They didn't even give him a chance running the ball. I guess we're talking about this conversation of who else besides Grant, but they don't give anybody else a chance. They give their backups like 1 or 2 reps, and maybe that's just because they're just not running the ball enough to spread out the carries. But going back to even Anthony Grant, he didn't get a big enough workload. He looked fresh today for the first time in a long time. Coming off that, he had that burst. He was making guys miss at the second level. I mean, like, he looked like the guy we saw earlier in the year. And considering all the issues they were having throwing the ball, I just don't understand why you didn't try to lean on that a little bit more. And again, I know Illinois' run defense is as good as there is in the Big Ten, at least statistically.
It's good.
So, I mean, you're asking a lot, but at the same time, I thought there needed to be much more balance, especially on those first downs, Sean. Throwing the ball that much on first down, I question that. I question that a lot.
You're joining us now. We're breaking down Nebraska's 26-9 loss here to Illinois, as the Huskers now have lost 2 in a row. They had a chance to kind of get back into this discussion in the Big Ten West. Now they're out of it pretty much right now at this point. I mean, and I think that's the question now. What are they playing for with 4 games remaining?
Bowl game.
Yeah,
that's still out there.
Bowl's on the table.
2 wins.
No, they got to get 3.
Oh, God.
Unless they get the APR bid.
No, it's 3. I was no, it's not going to be APR.
We've covered enough 5 and 7 bowl game APR.
Yeah, 3 wins is going to be really difficult. I mean, we just got to see what the news is with Casey.
I mean, that defines the season. If any hope of a bowl game relies solely on the right arm and the injury to it for Casey Thompson.
We learned that tonight. That's one big takeaway tonight. We learned Casey Thompson's value to this team, really, in a stark way, in a sort of a scary way.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now Casey's a good quarterback. I mean, his value to this team is enormous.
Without him, they cannot move the ball.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it.
Not right now, at least.
So again, it's that margin for error conversation. Now Grant at one point was down. If you took Casey and Anthony Grant
with
out
Trey
of the
Palmer
equation.
getting completely locked down.
Yeah.
What do you have?
I don't know what you're doing.
Travis Vokolek.
Yeah.
That's it. But here's another thing to be said. We just talked about the way they structure practice and how the starter gets 90% of the reps during the week. Maybe Chubba looks a little different with a week full of prep, working as the starter.
There's a lot to this conversation.
He's got the talent.
So what Sean's alluding to in a pro style practice is one station.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people have talked about that at Nebraska for years. Why are you practicing with one station? I mean, Osborne.
You can't. I mean,
don't roll your eyes. But Osborne will go 3 or 4 stations. I'm not suggesting you go 3 or 4, but could you go 2? Couldn't you go?
Well,
2
Frost was
stations?
trying to kind of do that.
Yeah, Frost did that.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you get people pretty fired. I think people just want to be done talking about that era. Like it.
Oh yeah.
It's just such a different time. I mean, 2030. I mean, it's just different.
Well, Tom Rand's practice way different for a lot of reasons, but it was impressive to watch it. 4 stations. You know, they run a couple over here and then a couple over on the outdoor field.
3 units would get 100 reps in a practice.
Yeah. So their backups were well versed. Yeah. And now, Sean, you're talking about one station practice with a lot of guys standing around. I know people hate this discussion, but this sort of illustrates the issue with it. Chubba looked like a quarterback who doesn't get many reps in practice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, that's what he looked like to me.
Yeah, and you got to think of the time he missed in the spring too. I mean,
Yeah.
he was playing catch up all spring,
Yeah.
to where the spring game was like that week before
Mm-hmm.
was the most extensive practice he'd had, and so he was already well behind, and so he's been playing catch up since he got here on campus, and now you're asking him to go up against one of the nation's top defenses in backup duty with very little prep during the week. That's a lot. So who knows? Again, my point is maybe if it comes down to it, Casey's out. Maybe Chubba looks a little more serviceable
when they give him time
when he's incorporated as the number 1 quarterback into the game plan, to where he's working with the receivers, he's executing the plays and all that, where I just don't know how much of a chance he got with that this week, because just considering the way Nebraska practices.
My guess is not much.
Yeah.
Well, we're wrapping up this game here. I want to hit on this too. The Raiola family, one of the other pregame stories of the game. You had the Raiola family here, and I sent Trey some photos of this from the pregame scene. Dylan Raiola, the number 1 player in the country, was here pregame, committed to Ohio State, still very much a solid Ohio State commit. They were with his younger brother, Dayton, who's a freshman. Nebraska just offered Dayton. Dominic was there. Their father, Dominic's father, Tony Raiola, was at the game as well, as kind of a family reunion gathering to watch Donovan coach. And it got a lot of buzz. I mean, it kind of dominated the pregame, and that's Dylan Raiola right there, as you can see. But what an opportunity they had just to, get on the minds of the Raiolas. And that feels kind of like a lost cause, at least for Mickey Joseph and his guys today as well.
For now, at least.
For now. Yeah. I mean, it's a long run, but, and that's Dominic talking there to athletic director Trev Alberts, their pregame. And that's Toby Wright, I believe, to the right there, talking the father of Javin Wright, former Husker player. And there's the Raiola crew there, Sip.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that whole scene today on the recruiting front, how many visitors? 50 some?
Yeah, they had a huge, Mickey has pushed it hard. I mean, his candidacy to be the head coach, they've really pushed it in the recruiting side. And, every Thursday he calls local high school coaches for an hour to 2 hours. And one of our users on the board, Husker Wood, Gary's been a longtime member of HuskerOnline, now works at Springfield Platteview, was at Bellevue East for years as the defensive coordinator there. Said that out of the blue, Mickey Joseph just called the Springfield Platteview head coach on Thursday to wish him luck in their playoff game. So he's done all he can. He's pushed all the right buttons in recruiting at a level that I think all Husker fans want to see. And that's been a positive in all this. And the Raiolas coming today was a real nice story as well. Unfortunately, it's just not going to probably deliver much, at least right now.
No, and this whole thing with Mickey is interesting because it's not, he didn't, he inherited the mess. He didn't really do anything to help create it. So that's why it's in some ways, listen, I get it though. If they're winning, we give him all the credit. When they lose, it's hard to come back and say, well, he didn't create this mess, so it's not his fault. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of people that support Mickey's candidacy. There's a lot of people that are very skeptical of that whole conversation. I get it. Mm-hmm. We can't, on one hand, when they win, say, wow, look how they're fighting under Mickey, and Mickey's changed everything. And then when they lose, we can't just come back and say, well, it's not Mickey's deal.
It's all Frost's fault.
Right. Yeah, it's not. So you gotta be analytical. I didn't think they looked particularly well prepared today. I mean, it is what it is. I don't know though. You could say
especially coming off a bye week.
Hold on though. I got to correct myself. They came out pretty well in a way. I mean, how many yards did they have in the first quarter?
I mean, they in the first half almost matched Illinois' allowed season average.
They were over 200.
Yeah, they had 215. Illinois was only giving up 221 on the season. The nation's #1 overall total defense.
So that suggests
they were clicking, and they were hitting big plays. That big play to Brewington, the big play to Travis Vokalek. They were getting chunk yards out of Anthony Grant early. Alante Brown had a 15 and a 32-yarder early, but then Illinois adjusted.
Well, then Casey got hurt.
Yeah, then Casey got hurt. They stopped trying to run the ball. They couldn't run the ball effectively, and it just went into full panic mode. And so
they didn't have a plan B.
That's where the criticism, if you want to talk about not being prepared, it's when things stopped going perfectly, Nebraska couldn't adjust, and they couldn't find ways to overcome that.
I want to get Weston hit us in the super chat with a comment, and he just said, "Is this loss on Mickey?" And Sip has already hit on this, but thank you, Weston, for your support here of Husker Online. And just wanted to get his super chat comment in the show here. And Simple, you've kind of hit on that. I mean, sure, it's on some coaches at times, but
it's always on the head coach.
There's a lot. I thought it was interesting post game when Mickey admitted the sizable gap between the quarterbacks. Typically, you don't hear the coach.
Oh no, yeah,
but he's being real. I mean, the starter is always better. I mean,
remember when Whipple first got here though, and said that day one Casey Thompson took the first reps, and people freaked out. Like, I can't believe he already announced Casey was the #1 over the other guys.
They still remember.
Go back to that question. Is this loss on Mickey? I mean, we just established that in the first half, Nebraska was up in that 215-yard range. So that suggests they're well prepared. This loss is much about Casey going down, and that's not on Mickey. Yeah. Now, it's hard to say because again, we don't know what went into preparing Chubba. Was there enough that went into getting Chubba?
Can Whipple get him prepared?
Yeah, I mean, was there enough? Did they prepare for the possibility of Thompson going down? Did they prepare adequately for that? Because now listen, we talked about it for the last 4 weeks. Casey's got to go down at some point because he's just getting rocked.
Yeah, shouldn't be surprised.
So they shouldn't have been surprised. So that's where I would want to know. I know we can ask this week. How much repetition was Chubba getting during the week?
Yeah.
Now it's hard to answer.
As far as we know, maybe he was getting.
Yeah, he might have been getting enough,
and maybe the moment was just too big for him.
Yeah, it could have been that.
So who knows?
All right, we're continuing our discussion here. Post-game show live. Nebraska, 26-9 losers. We've got a month left, guys. That's it. 4 weeks. But in all reality, Trev Alberts, this discussion for the next head coach, it's got to be kind of starting to get the ball moving in the next week or two. And that's why we thought today in this Minnesota game were huge, because it was a real opportunity at home, great weather, big stage for Mickey to kind of vault his candidacy, to really make a push for it.
Maybe
Trevor's like, there was no chance,
or maybe he has somebody. See, we always have these. It's interesting, and I do it, you do it, everybody does it. We talk about this search like we almost talk about like it's fictional, a fictional event happening. For all we know, Trev has a guy hired. I mean,
let's not pretend he's like, all right, what coaches are available on September 12th? Like,
right. Well, yeah, but you see what I'm saying? It's possible that Trev has made a decision and locked somebody in.
And guys,
it's very possible.
This is a more attractive job to me than it's been the last few times it's been open, because of the Big Ten and the shift of the money in college football, because of the collectives that Nebraska has access to and the money that they're going to have, particularly with the 1890 Initiative Collective and the Pede family, and then the new facilities. Those things make this a phenomenal job for whoever wants it. Yes, there are recruiting challenges here because of the geographical location for Nebraska, but you add the collective, the facilities, and being in the Big Ten or the SEC, I mean, these are the premier jobs right now, and Nebraska is going to offer whoever gets this job the best of everything.
Yeah, and the one guy that comes up is Bielema, or not the one guy, but one of the guys that comes up is Bielema. And one of the Champaign News Gazette writers was telling me, don't look for that. I mean, he's building a mansion.
He's pretty comfy there.
Yeah,
he's building a mansion in Champaign.
He's building a mansion in Champaign right now. He's got 2 young daughters, 35-year-old wife. I think he wants to put down roots there. He's from Illinois. I'd be a little surprised.
He looked very comfortable. He looks very comfortable there.
Yeah, if he would leave there after 2 years with what he's got going. And the other factor is that the writer pointed out was Illinois can come with whatever kind of money they need. I mean, they have
AD's a bulldog.
They have Big Ten money.
Yeah, they do.
They can pay him.
Yeah, think about that AD. I mean,
Josh Whitman.
Josh Whitman survived the Lovie Smith disaster. I mean, he kind of pushed that through, and that was a disaster. And he was able to get through that, and then at basketball too. I mean, he was able to bring in Brad Underwood. And who did he oust for Brad Underwood? The guy, the Ohio coach,
John Gross,
the guy that Nebraska won.
John Gross,
Tim Miles.
Yeah. So I mean, guy's hitting right now. I mean, he hired Brad Underwood, who's got Illinois as a top 10 team or top 25 team, and then he's got Brett Bielema, who all of a sudden is well on his way to coaching in Indianapolis here.
Well, Illinois. I was wondering if they. I mean, I went in wondering, are they real? They look pretty real to me. They didn't look overrated, really.
So, they're compare them to Ohio State.
They're not Ohio.
Okay,
but compare them to the Big Ten West.
Oh, they're a Citrus Bowl team. That's what they are.
They look like that.
They're going to play in the Citrus Bowl against Kentucky. Like that.
Yeah, and they look like they could give Kentucky a go. I mean, they're really physical. Oh yeah, I mean, what made a big impression on me. It'll get lost in the discussion. Nobody will talk about it this week, but I'll bring it up. There were a couple of times when, on 1st and 10, they just run it up the middle, and their push was enormous. That there was a time I think they were at the 11. It was 1st and 10 at the 11, and they pushed just a simple run play. The scrum went 10 yards. It was very Wisconsin-esque.
It looked like a rugby scrum.
Yeah, It was very Wisconsin-esque, like where they just pulverized Nebraska's front. I mean, just on a basic run play, he just burrowed behind the line for 10 yards. I mean, that's some serious push. And that's Bielema. That's Bielema. I mean, he's a line coach. Defensive line, offensive line. His lines are going to be good, and they are good. Their offensive line's not great, but their defensive line's pretty.
Their D line is legit.
And
their O line is physical, and they're nasty.
Yeah.
Did you see how many plays those guys are blocking 2, 3, 5 seconds after the whistle?
Bielema.
There was a play where some guy was just driving Luke Reimer 20 yards downfield. Reimer's looking at the official like, "Hey, come on!"
Yeah.
Like that's what they did almost every play. And you saw Nebraska. It was getting to Nebraska's defenders. They're like, for one, the refs let them do it, but two, like they just kept pushing it further and further and further. So as the game wore on, the totality of that physicality was it took the game over.
Bielema's at the top of his profession. He's 52. I shouldn't say he's at the top of his profession, but he's at the top of his game. I think that Arkansas job.
Yeah, he's in his wheelhouse right now.
Failing at Arkansas
helped him.
Probably made him hungry. And I think there's a determination that you see.
Hungry.
Well, God, you saw them,
Sean.
Sorry.
Wow.
Low hanging food.
Hungry.
But you saw that Wisconsin game too when he went back up to Madison. Like he's got a
that's a tough
chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, and
a few chips.
Yeah.
Okay, Weston in the super chat again, hitting us up and just said, "Hey, at least we have volleyball."
Yeah,
absolutely. Follow Abby Barmore. She's killing it on the volleyball beat. The shining light of good news on her website.
Except when they play Wisconsin.
Yes, well, we don't talk about that. They took care of business tonight against Maryland.
Did they?
Sweep.
Really?
It's domination.
And you are going to Colorado tomorrow.
Yeah.
To cover
5 a.m. flight out of Lincoln, heading out to Boulder to watch them
for a scrimmage.
It's a charity exhibition game. It's not a
It's
scrimmage.
like the soap scrimmage.
They keep stats. It's going to be
bring a bottle of Gatorade or soap or shampoo or towels or.
Well, yeah, no.
I'm just kidding.
This is going to be the first look at basketball. But anyway, nobody wants to hear about basketball right now, do they?
Back to football. What other questions?
Yeah, I want to get through
Talk
some
about
of the
podcast.
questions here. we got a lot of comments. I just want to see if I can get a couple good questions because we have a lot of interaction on the show. A lot of talk about Bill O'Brien, debating on him, and fans think Bill O'Brien is basically would be Mike Riley 2.0.
Yeah, no, I often tout O'Brien. The thing I'd worry about right away is if he gets good, just going to the pros. And I think
he doesn't stare you anywhere long.
Right. And I think he would maybe be a possibility for New England. I'd watch that. So I like O'Brien. I do like O'Brien, and he is not Mike Riley 2.0. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's unfamiliarity.
First of all, they're completely polar opposite personalities.
Completely.
I mean,
O'Brien's a hard ass.
Completely.
O'Brien's closer to Pelini.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good.
He's like a polished Bo Pelini.
Yeah. Yeah. Still very rough.
Still very rough.
Yeah.
Slightly polished.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, I want to get back to a point you talked about with Mickey calling high school coaches. Like, is Mickey doing something unique, or was it more a matter of the previous head coach ignoring that element? Like, what would the surprise that got when Brian yourself kind of wrote about this week was striking to me, to where like people were like, was Frost not doing this? So is this unique for a head coach to be that active with local high school coaches?
The biggest thing is Mickey uses his support staff probably better, and they manage him, where I felt like the support staff had a hard time maybe getting to Frost, or getting to him to do, like, just the overall
getting to him period
workflow of things wasn't great. Frost just wasn't a big, I mean, think about this. In 5 years, I think I've talked to Frost on the phone twice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you maybe a few times, Simple.
A few times.
He just wasn't as accessible. And I think Mickey had a drive he understood it and wanted to do it, and give Vince Ginta credit too. I think since Vince Ginta has gotten here, he's added a leadership arm to the day-to-day of recruiting that might have been missing. And when Frost first came
Frost hired Ginta.
Yes.
Too late.
But when Frost first came here, he had Bob Welton. And Bob Welton is now the director of recruiting and personnel for Alabama, Nick Saban. Well, Bob Welton was only here for a cup of coffee. He was here like 3-4 months. Then he went to Alabama. They never replaced Bob Welton. They instead, they just kind of promoted the UCF guys. Everybody kind of had their department, and there wasn't really a true figurehead of the department to lead the day-to-day recruiting. Everyone kind of had a lane. Ginta now, all the lanes report to him. And that was missing.
Good analysis.
I think they needed just another layer of management in that recruiting department, because this is a different job than UCF. Frost's staff, when they brought him over, they had not had experience at a place like this with the local coaches around here, the lay of the land. And I think the Ginta hire, unfortunately, might have been too late. I mean,
well, no, not might have been. It was.
And it should have been like a guy like Welton should have been replaced.
Right.
And that falls on Scott Frost.
No, that's what I'm getting
at. Like, Frost should have replaced Bob Welton with a Vince Ginta type hire.
Right away. That's what I was getting at when I said too late. Yeah. Frost made a nice hire of Vince Ginta, but he waited till Scott was under extreme fire. So,
and at what cost? Like in the meantime, between those two hires, like how much did Nebraska lose with their traction on the recruiting front by not having someone that was running the show to that degree? Yeah, I mean, a lot of what ifs with that.
Yeah,
and you're seeing what it should be. I mean, Ginta is running it like it should be run, and he's holding assistants accountable. They're getting the head coach on the phone for 2 hours on Thursdays to talk to local coaches. I mean, you need a person that gets on the coach and does that. And they just, that the area just wasn't quite there. Got one comment here in the super chat from CB and Sip. You can comment on this one. How on earth did Kansas State beat Ohio State Oklahoma State, 48-0 with the backup QB? Your thoughts? Is Kleiman a serious candidate of consideration?
Well, I mean, you would think, he would fit. I think he would fit here. What would he do for the fan base? I don't know. There's just nobody out there really that
keeps having games like today.
Yeah, but
that'll do something for the fan base.
That would, but there's nobody out there that's realistic. I'd say that everybody would agree on, I don't think.
Yeah.
Some people would yawn at Kleiman.
Oh yeah, no question.
A lot of people would yawn at O'Brien. A lot of people would yawn
Lance.
at
There are people that would
Lance.
hate Urban Meyer.
Yeah,
Dave
like-
Doran,
Yeah, a lot of
Every
yawns.
candidate you name,
Mark Stoops.
a faction of the fan base will be vocally opposed to.
Yeah,
No question. It's just-
Trev's in a tough spot for
Okay,
sure.
but they hired the candidate everybody wanted in
And look
Scott
what happened.
Frost. It was a disaster.
Mhm.
Now they hired the one in Pelini, and there was a lot of success. I mean, Pelini went to 3 conference title games. A lot of it was with Bill Callahan's talent he brought in the early years.
Yeah, they brought talent in here.
Bo
though, too.
brought talent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying he didn't
Yeah.
bring talent, but I mean, he got Nebraska in the top 10.
Right. He brought in talent. I mean, Rex Burkhead and Amir Abdullah and Vincent Valentine and Collins and Gregory.
Mill.
Those are all guys that he brought in.
Sue, though, I mean, come on.
No, I got you.
The fact
But
that-
anyway, yeah, this whole thing is you're gonna get right. It's gonna ramp up pretty quick. Now, here's the thing. Again, I don't want to do that where I talk about it like I know what's going on. We say it's gonna ramp up. It could be over.
Maybe it's
for all
already ramped.
Right.
It's been
It's
done.
really a strange conversation how we talk about it and how we present it. And I think we have to be very careful in how we present something that we don't know. We have no idea, really. Now, people don't want to hear that, but I've said it's better that way. You don't want this to become a public clown show because you'll cost yourself candidates and you'll look bad.
Well, we've seen a lot of clown shows here over
yeah.
the years,
Yeah, we have.
and it's bad.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. So Trev, I applaud him for keeping this very, I don't like to say secret, but just professional.
Was it you or Sean or Sip that in Tunnel Talk mentioned how many people are even remotely involved in what Trev's thinking right now? Like he's got like
I mentioned
one. Yeah, it was you said
Yeah.
1 or 2 maybe people that have
Doug
any
Ewald.
clue what's going on.
And maybe a couple close UNO people that he really like, booster supporters.
from his days at UNO. Yeah, I think he has a friend in Omaha who was a longtime supporter of UNO that might know. And then his chief financial officer here. That's what I was told. It'd be maybe 2 people that would know. Maybe his wife. Seriously, maybe his wife might know. But it's under wraps.
Well, it should be.
That's why. Yeah, that's
I mean,
what I've been
we're
saying.
talking about guys working other jobs, and if it got out,
Yeah, that'd be a bad look.
you know, it could. I always think about when it was wrongly reported that Gary Patterson was taking the K-State job in the middle of like this time of the year. You know, when all that went down when Ron Prince left K-State or whenever it was. But that was a bad deal.
It's a bad look. It cast Nebraska in a bad light. If, for instance, there was some kind of report, anonymous, that Nebraska had reached out to Lance Leipold, and Lance Leipold talked to Nebraska. Now, what would Leipold
verbally agreed to terms?
or something like that? What would Leipold tell his players?
Yeah.
His boosters, everybody, his fan base, and then that's Nebraska. So Nebraska, thanks for interfering in Kansas's nice season. So yeah, I don't think you want any part of that.
Well, think about this too. I mean, they still got a team playing football right now at Nebraska.
Yeah,
you still have an interim head coach just trying to get through this season. He's still coaching, recruiting, as if he's still got a chance for the job.
Think of the impact that would have on that operation.
You rip that rug out from under him. I mean, where does it go? All of a sudden, the coach is like, "Why do I care?"
Why do you want that?
Yeah.
Why do you want that?
It's a very delicate situation, and I think the way Trev's handled it, the fact that it's so secretive that all of us are just speculating, is that the way it needs to be? Because the other way would just end badly.
This is what I know. That Iowa game, when it gets over on Friday, we're done riding. I mean, we're driving back.
Yep. Gonna move quick.
Like we have to get back here pretty quickly, I think, because by Saturday night, this thing might be out.
Oh yeah.
And by Sunday, we might be over here covering guys leaving or covering guys coming in. And it's going to go quick because Monday and Tuesday is going to be this new, it's not done yet, but a dead period where a coach has an opportunity to meet with players to find out who's staying, who's going in the portal. I mean, it's going to get wild. Shannon Terry, and I don't know if Trey can find this tweet, but Shannon Terry made a tweet that this like 50-day period that we're going to get from like Thanksgiving through January is going to be maybe the wildest stretch of recruiting we've ever seen, with full throttle NIL mixed into it, with full throttle transfer portal mixed together. Because we've had full throttle transfer portal to an extent, but NIL wasn't quite full throttle. Now it is.
Not to the level it is now.
And coaching change. I mean, it's going to get wild when you look at what this is going to be in about a month. Like
full-blown free agency.
And it's going to go for 50 days. Like we're going to go all the way up until the first day of classes, which is the day after Martin Luther King Day.
Oh, good.
So clear your calendar.
A lot of news.
Yeah. Stay
tuned.
ready
to
stay
write
tuned
on
to
Christmas.
HuskerOnline.com. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some commit stories on Christmas and Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving and all that stuff.
Oh. But yeah, no better
Rough day
time.
today.
No better time though to be on Husker Online, because we will have all of this on there. I mean, we dedicate our life. I mean, like, we love what we do. We love the opportunity that we get to talk to the great Nebraska fans on the platform that we have, which is the largest online community, Husker Online, the Red Sea Scrolls. We've added Steve Sipple to our staff here on June 1, and you know we know that it's going to be busy, and you're going to want to get on here, take advantage of the $10 special.
Some fun times ahead. And we got basketball coming up. We got volleyball rolling. They're going to be playing deep into the NCAA
We cover
tournaments.
baseball.
We cover baseball. Fall ball just is.
Well, you're gonna have a new coach.
Yeah. So
A new football coach.
coach. Yeah. Oh yeah, that too. And
Yeah,
so
somebody.
yeah,
New players,
come the
new
turn of the year.
assistants.
We're getting into winter conditioning, all that sort of stuff. Transfer portal, spring ball rolling up. The calendar never slows down. It will always be wild.
All right. Final thoughts. Casey Thompson, what percent do you guys put on him? I mean, just your feel at 9:30 on Saturday night. Do we see Casey Thompson next week against Minnesota?
At this point, just based off the limited information, I'm going to say unlikely. They said that he hit his elbow. Mickey said that he hit his elbow and he lost feeling in his hand and his fingers.
His fingers, yeah.
So
Nerves.
I'm no doctor. I was nerves. And
Right.
so, like, what is the extent of that? We'll see. But right now, just based off that, I would say it's unlikely. And even if he does play, like, what percentage of Casey Thompson are we going to get? What is he going to be able to do? What kind of throws is he going to be able to make with an injured throwing arm, hand, elbow, whatever?
I don't want to speculate on that injury. I just want to say this is a monumental day in a bad way. I mean, this is exceptionally rough.
It turned
day.
quick today.
Yeah.
There was hope, and
There was a lot of it.
not anymore.
There was a lot of hope. But we found out, I mean, Nebraska was good enough to hang in there for a quarter, a little more than a quarter. But then when when Nebraska lost Casey Thompson, Sean, you nailed it on the sideline late in the game. A good quarterback disguises a lot of issues. With him out, the issues just were magnified.
I don't know if they could overcome him at this point.
Well, thanks again for everyone for joining us here on the Husker Online postgame live show. We'll be back again after Minnesota. If you missed it, that's an 11 a.m. game next week, ESPN2. So we'll be live after that game a lot earlier. So make sure you join us as well. We'll have the Monday Night Quarterback Show going to this week as Jeff Cameron, Steve Sipple, Jim Rose. We try to kind of put another wrap on things. Then we'll hear from Mickey Joseph again on Tuesday. So get on to HuskerOnline.com, read all our postgame coverage. Stay with us. You will not get a better snapshot of what's going on with Nebraska football than on Husker Online. Thanks again to our producer, Trey Yannity, on the back end, putting the show together. And for Robin Washett, Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan.